All right, my friends, welcome to another video lesson. In this lesson, we're going to be learning how to do an output, how to export our project from our timeline to our outputs folder at the file level. Now, if you look at my timeline here, I've got my video and audio, as well as something extra at the end. I've put in credits to give credit where credit is due. And this is something that is required for all of your projects in this class. And you can see I've got up here the editor, the fact that it's for educational purposes only, the source of the music, the sound effects, and the additional video that I used as well. So as I've done here, I highly encourage you to move beyond the media that I provided you. Go to the free resources in the class toolbox and download several music tracks from Free Music Archive or the other sources there, and try and find the best fit to tell your story. Get some sound effects from Free Sound, and then grab some additional video as well. Go beyond what I provided. It'll help to make your story unique. So, how did I do this? How did I get this text in here? Well, I used the Type tool, which is on your tool panel here. Keyboard shortcut T, which makes sense. So I'm going to get rid of this text element in here and rebuild it. Show you how to do it. So let's zoom in a little bit. I'll select it and delete it. With my playhead at the end of my sequence here, I'm going to grab the Type tool with the keyboard shortcut T and roll over my program monitor here and just click. And doing that actually creates the new text graphic and allows you to type your information. So I'm going to begin by typing edited by return my name. Okay, and you can see it is not centered. All right, it's not centered in the frame and the text is not centered on itself. So there are controls that I can utilize to make this happen. So I'm going to head over to my effect controls here, and you can see I've got a line for text. If I twirl that down, here it is, my text, edited by Luke Bisogna. Here is the font that's being used, and here are some alignment controls. This is standard justification, just like you might find in Word. So I'm going to go to Center Align Text, and now the text is centered on itself. So I'm going to click back in here and hit Return again, and continue typing. Next line is for educational purposes only. Return. And I'm going to start giving credit to the sources of my media here. Music, return, and Free Music Archive.org. Archive, not arcove. And sound effects. And you can see I'm almost out of the frame here. We'll fix that. freesound.org. Oops, I missed the F there. Okay. Now, in order to move this entire text box up, I need to switch to my selection tool. So I'm going to go down here and do that. And I'm going to click the button instead of using the keyboard shortcut, because if I hit the keyboard shortcut V, it's actually going to type a V. So I have to hit the button here. And you can see I get this bounding box that I can actually grab onto and move around. Okay, so I'm going to align the center bounding indicator here with the center on my safe margins here. And let's talk about the safe margins. This is something that I have turned on. So if I go to the wrench in the lower right of my program panel, click on that, you can see I've got a whole bunch of different choices here, but I'm going to go down to safe margins. Okay, that's what actually gives me the alignment margins for my video frame here. So if I click on that wrench again and turn safe margins back on, you can see I get two sets of lines here, the outside margin and the inside margin. The outside margin is known as action safe. It's where you want to keep anything that's happening on screen inside of to ensure that it's seen on all different platforms, all different screens it could possibly be watched on. So if you have somebody maybe pointing a gun that's close to the edge of the frame, you don't want that to be cut off on a television, on a computer, or a phone. So this action safe line here is a guide to help ensure that that doesn't happen. You keep that action inside that line and it's going to be seen for sure. Same applies for the title safe line here as well. Any text you want to have inside the inside line to be sure that it's viewable and easily readable on all screens. So I'm going to continue typing here. I'm going to just double click to get back into my box, click at the end, return again, and give credit for my additional video. And I got that from videvo.com. There we go. That's pretty close to the line there, so I'm going to realign that as well. Move that up just a little bit. And if I wanted to be extra safe, I can head over to my controls here and change the size of the font. I can drag it bigger or smaller here with this slider, type in a value if I want to, say 75. And now it's very safely inside Title Safe. Now I can also change the font as well. There's a little drop down here for that. And there are all kinds of choices. I think I'm going to go with Helvetica New. Yeah, I like the look at that. Very easily readable. But there is one particular font that you are not allowed to use in this class, ever. And that font is Papyrus, right here. One of the most ridiculous, overused, hackneyed, trite fonts in existence. And in fact, if you turn in your project with Papyrus in it, I will reject it and require you to change it and resubmit it. Why do I have this hatred for Papyrus? Well, aside from the fact that it's completely overused and unoriginal, there's another very special reason that was detailed a few years back in a Saturday Night Live sketch. And I'll tell you what, I will post a link for that so you can check it out and see exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so let's change back to Helvetica New here and move on. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is get what's called a slug, a handle of nothing at either end of our sequence here, at the very beginning and at the very end. What I want is exactly 1 second of black. No video, no audio, nothing but pure black. So to do that, we're going to edit it in. And we need to create this black before we can do that. And in order to do that, we're going to use the new item icon down here, what I like to call the foldy piece of paper. We're going to click that and choose black video. And it comes up with this dialog box asking about the frame size, frame rate, and pixel aspect ratio. And this is based on our sequence. So almost 100% of the time, we are going to say OK to this. And when we do, you can see in our project panel, new black video has been put into our bin structure. So because this is actual media, it is video, we're going to put it into our media bin. And there it is. So I'm going to double click it to open it in the source monitor. And you can see there is a preset in and out in here already. That is 4 seconds and 29 frames long, roughly 5 seconds. Well, I only want 1 second. So what I'm going to do is make sure my playhead is at my endpoint by hitting Shift-I. And I want just 1 second. And we are editing in a 30 frame timeline here. So how many frames are in 1 second? 30. So I want to get 30 frames for 1 second in here. So I'm going to remove my out using Option-O on a Mac or Shift-Control-O on a PC. I'm going to move my playhead to the 29th frame. Now, why didn't I go to frame 30? Well, the reason is that I start out on frame 0. So that's actually the first frame. So if I want 30, I need to add 29 more frames to that. So if I go to frame 29, marking out with the O key, I've got exactly 1 second. So this indicator here tells me the duration of my selection here. And that is true in the source panel as well as the program monitor. So now that I've got my second of black, I want to edit it down to the timeline. I want to make sure I'm patched correctly here. And I want the source V1 to go to the destination V1, the first video track in my timeline. Looks like I'm ready to go there. Let's make sure the playhead's all the way back at the beginning. And I'm going to mark my in here with an I. And I want to insert this 1 second of black at the beginning and shove everything else downstream. So I need to use an insert edit to do that. Keyboard shortcut, comma key. Let's execute the edit. Boom, there it is. Zoom in a little bit, and I can actually check to make sure that this is actually exactly 1 second long. I'll select the clip and mark it with my / key, check the duration over here in my program monitor, and there it is, 1 second. Option X or Shift Control X to remove my in and out. Zoom to timeline with my / key. Now I'm going to move to the end and tack my second of black on there too. Now I don't have to shove anything else downstream here, so I'm just going to use an overwrite edit, marking my in and using the period key to overwrite. And there's my second of black at the end as well. Nice. Okay, so now that I've done all that work, I think I'm going to save. Command or Control S. Move my playhead back to the beginning here. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually execute the output. And we're going to do that using the output dialog box. So what I want to do is make sure that I have my timeline selected here. And I could go up to File and Export Media, or I could do what the cool kids do and use a keyboard shortcut. And that's, of course, what we are going to do here. So this is Command or Control M for Make Movie. And it takes a couple seconds, but the export dialog box will launch. And there it is. Now there are a lot of settings associated with this panel, and I'm going to go through a great deal of them right now. We're going to start out over here on the left. And you can see there's a source and output tab here. We're concerned with the output tab. And what I want you to notice is that you can actually drag this playhead through and see what the output version of your timeline will look like. Kind of a preview of what you're going to get once you complete this process. Most of the time, your settings are going to be based on the timeline that you're using, so that the source and the output will look the same. This could be different if you were changing the size or pixel aspect ratio for some reason on output, but that is a very rare occurrence. So let's head over to the export settings now. And we're going to use H.264. So I'm going to hit this drop down here and make sure that I have H.264 selected, not H.264 Blu-ray, not HEVC H.265, just plain H.264. And then we're going to skip over the next drop down here preset because we're actually going to create one in this process. So we're going to head down to the output name here. Now this is very important. This output name actually defaults to the name of your sequence. So if you have your sequence name correctly, your output file name will also be correct. This is one of the reasons that I'm so particular about this. So I'm going to click on it here and navigate to where I actually want to output this. So I'm going to go to Desktop and to my montage project and to my Outputs folder. That's where I want it to wind up. Hit Save. So now Premiere knows what to call this and where to put it. Next, we're going to make sure that Export Video and Export Audio are both checked. And then we're going to head down to the Video tab here. And in this area, we can usually use Match Source. So if you hit that button, basically everything is set to the same settings as your sequence. In our case, regular HD, 1920 by 1080, frame rate of 29.97, in essence 30 frames per second. Field order progressive, pixel aspect ratio of 1. So this is 1080p at 30 frames per second. Now, if I wanted to change something, say the frame rate, I would just uncheck the box here and hit the down arrow and make a different selection. We don't want to do that, so I'm going to leave it checked. And then I'm going to make sure that render at maximum depth is checked. This is usually connected to the use of certain effects. Color correction, certain blurs, ultra key for chroma key work, and compositing work. So we're going to make sure this is checked to ensure the highest quality of whatever effects we used. Pull the slider down here. Encoding settings. Now this is something that is a little bit new here. And basically you have the choice of hardware or software encoding. If your system supports it, hardware encoding can actually make the output process a little bit faster. If not, software encoding works just fine. No worries there. Profile should be set to main. Level of 4.1 is just fine. We'll move on down a little further here. Mastering display color volume is something we don't have to worry about. We'll leave that set at the default there. Content light levels, same thing. But the bitrate settings are very important to us. It defaults to VBR 1-pass. VBR stands for variable bitrate, as opposed to CBR, which stands for constant bitrate. Now the difference between these is VBR involves Premiere going through and trying to determine the lowest data rate possible based on what's happening on screen, usually movement. And it can do this in one pass or can actually go through the timeline twice and do its best to figure out the optimal data rate to be using at any given time. Now, I have personally had issues with this, particularly on fades to and from black, where if there's motion in the video, I'll actually get pixelization that occurs. So I like to choose CBR, constant bitrate, which basically uses the maximum data rate the entire time to ensure the highest quality picture possible at whatever target bitrate you're using. In our case, we're going to go down here and type 15. So for the purposes of this class, I'd like you to use constant bitrate every time. All right, pulling down the slider again. Advanced settings, keyframe distance. So what we're going to do is check this box, and what we want in here is a value that is a multiple of the frame rate of our timeline. In our case, 30 frames per second. So I'm going to type in here, instead of 72, 30. And what this does is it causes Premiere every 30 frames, every 1 second, to go through and do a quality check and ensure that our video is at the highest quality possible, so that all our hard work comes out polished and professional on the other end. All right, so we're going to move up to the audio tab here and make sure that the audio format is set to AAC, which stands for Advanced Audio Codec. We don't want to use MPEG. Again, down here, audio codec drop-down should be set to AAC. The sample rate should be 48,000 Hertz. This is the standard sample rate for audio in video. 48,000 Hertz, 48 kilohertz, or just plain 48K. You'll hear it referred to in all of those ways. Channels we want set to stereo. Audio quality, we want that set to high. I honestly don't know why they give you the choice to set it to low or medium. We're just going to set it to high. And then the bitrate should be 320, the max. And then under advanced settings here, we want the precedence set to bitrate as opposed to sample rate. There's one more area that we're concerned with here. This panel at the bottom, we want to make sure that use maximum render quality is checked. We don't have to worry about checking use previews because we didn't render anything. If you did, you can check this and it'll make the output a little bit easier on Premiere. We're not going to import it back into the project. We don't have to worry about setting the start time code to anything, and we're not going to be rendering an alpha channel. Under time interpolation, it defaults to frame sampling, which is just fine for what we're doing here. And then you can see there's an estimated file size here at the bottom. This isn't always totally accurate, but it'll give you a good idea about the overall file size of your output file once it's done. So now there's one more choice that we have to worry about, and that's over here on the left, the source range. it defaults to sequence in out, meaning if you have an in and an out set in your timeline, Premiere will only output what's in between those points. So if you have a 4-minute timeline and you have only 5 seconds identified with an in and an out, that's all you're going to get on your output is that 5 seconds. So it's actually safer to choose entire sequence and ensure that you have nothing but what you want output in your timeline. And what I mean is you don't have any slop at the end, any clips that you were working with that you were dragging and dropping into the usable part of your sequence. Ensure that there's nothing but what you want there and choose entire sequence, and you're going to be good to go every time. So now that we have checked all of these settings, as I said before, why don't we save a preset so we don't have to go through this again? So up here in the preset area, there's a couple of different icons here. There is the Save Preset icon and the Import Preset icon. We're going to use Save Preset here. Click it. And we're going to give it a name. We're going to say 1080p for 1080 progressive. That's the frame size. And then we're going to say H.264 for the codec that we're using. And then we're going to put in the data rate, 15 megabits per second. And then one more underscore, and we're going to put in the fact that this is stereo. 2-channel stereo output. I'm going to hit OK. And now you can see I have a preset up here. So next time we go to output, all we have to do is select H.264, hit the down arrow, and choose our preset right here. Boom, done. The only thing that we will have to check again is the source range. It doesn't get saved in the preset. Only the stuff on this side does. But it'll save us a lot of work. Okay, so now that we've done all that setup, we're gonna cross our fingers and hope everything works out when we hit the Do It button, Export. And it finished. So now what we're gonna do is go to the file level and check our output. Make sure that everything executed properly without any glitches. And here we are at the file level. So let's give this a check. Go to our outputs folder. And here it is, our file, complete. I'm going to double click it. And you can see, here's everything we did. So it's a good idea, as I said, to play through this real time, watch everything, make sure that the entire thing exported the way it should have and that there are no surprises. So just give it a watch and make sure everything's good. All the way through. I highly recommend that you do that. Okay. So that about does it for the output procedure, my friends. I'll see you again for another video lesson.